Hello, my name is Margaret Odell, and welcome to the most overdue indie book review. I had originally intended on doing this review video in August, for Indie August, and I went to type out the Goodreads and the Amazon, and was all ready and getting all prepared, then the author messaged me. Originally, I'd gotten an e-copy of this book, which is fine, it's how I get most of them, but the author said that he wanted to send me a physical copy because he, quote, liked the videos where I moved the book all around. So apparently, all of my wild gesticulation is actually a feature of my videos. It's actually a good thing. So that was nice to know. Happy about that. And the book is The Unfettered Child by Michael C. Sahd. I finally have the book to wave around. This is a high fantasy and I believe a standalone, which comes into play with the plot a lot. Now, I don't know where I heard this, or where I got this, or if I saw it in another review or on Twitter, but going into this, I originally thought that it was character-driven. It's very much not. It's very much plot-driven, but this revolves around a young girl named Samara, whose tribe is attacked by elves, and I low-key love that the elves are the villains in here, and she finds that she has this incredible power awakened that's low-key super destructive and makes her kind of a menace to society without meaning to. And while her father believes her dead from this attack, he then goes to save his wife, who has been captured by these elves, and chaos ensues as a result of it. Now, here's the problem with this review. I originally gave this book 3 stars, and I had a variety of things for why I gave that 3 stars. Then I got a message from the author when he finally got the physical copies that he could send to me, and he talks about how he actually edited things based on my Goodreads review, but he said the essence is still the same. So, because I don't have time or the justification to read this 400-page book again, I have so many other indie books, I'm going to ask you to take a lot of my criticisms with a grain of salt. I have cut down most of what I know he edited, and some of what I don't think I included in those written reviews, but I knew I wanted to talk about will still be in. So I'm not going to change my original review just yet. Maybe I'll get around to rereading the book. I know there's actually been another author that edited a book I reviewed based on my critiques in that review. And side note, I don't expect anyone to do that. Like, I know pretty much every indie author, once they give me their book to review, will watch the review. I don't expect anyone to actually edit their book based on my review. But I commend any indie author who is willing to take constructive criticism and improve their work. All right, side note over. So, one of the biggest problems I had with this going in is that Samara, for all that she sometimes occasionally struggles with her powers, at other times seems completely in control of them. When she starts learning magic in a more conventional sense, it all comes easy to her immediately, and this child is 8 years old and is like far and above, and I understand her having the power, but having like the, I guess, motor skills or having like the finesse of an adult to work magic as well as she does was a little bit unbelievable for me. And the other thing that I struggled with was there is this villain, and you find out pretty early on that it's a villain, and his soul is trapped in this gem. And this gem is put in Samara's dagger through plot events, and he ends up becoming her guide. Now, again, you know, like, pretty much from the beginning of the book, this dude's a villain, and he's her guide, so there's a little bit of tension in knowing that, you know, Samara is trusting this dude with a blind child's faith when he's evil, and you know he's evil, but I almost kind of wish that had been a reveal, that, like, you're low-key, maybe he goes by a different name, because he gives her his real name, which makes no sense. Like, if you're trying to be low-key, fake name. But he gives her his real name, and I would have loved it to be like, he gives her a fake name, and then it comes out that it's actually this really evil dude. I feel like that would have been a great reveal that we didn't really get, but I like the idea of it And Samara, when she is in those moments of just straight up losing herself, that's fantastic. When she does act like a scared little child that's been through all this torment and reacts. If you've watched my videos, and I say this a lot, I love when younger characters are actually vulnerable. I hate it when stories make anyone from a child up to a teenager seem almost adult-like in their abilities. And Samara at times is very, like, she's very sad and confused and easily trusting. Like, I don't blame her for trusting Iltyd. I just wish that I hadn't known. And I appreciated those moments. Again, I also appreciated that elves were evil. I feel like elves are uppity a lot of the time and deserve to be evil in more stories, the same way that I think that orcs should be good in more stories. I guess what I'm saying is I really just want a book where orcs are the good guys and elves are the bad guys. Someone write me that fantasy. Anyway, there are other characters, but they're fairly not bland, but not delved into. Like I said, this is much more plot driven. There's a lot of destruction. There's a lot of war. There's a lot of traveling around. So characters really only serve as the way to move the plot forward more than themselves. Samara's father and his grief over what he believes to be the death of his daughter and his wife's kidnapping. His grief and anger is very believable. He's probably one of the most emotionally deep characters in the story, even though there are other members of the tribe that was virtually decimated there. His grief feels the most real in comparison to them. Even Samara's, for all that she was, there when it happened, wasn't really all that grieved by it. And I guess you could say, children bounce back more quickly, or, she just doesn't have the wherewithal to think about it. But in general, Oren, Samara's father, yes, Oren? Yes, definitely has the most in the way of emotional depth. And I have debated whether or not to include this particular part because, again, I don't know if it's still in there because I didn't include this as a critique in my original review, so I don't know if Michael Sahd know that this was something that I took issue with, and it seems kind of like a little thing, but also not. So this character is mostly everyone is hetero, and I don't think the tribe is supposed to be darker skinned, like they're in a snowy climate, and I get the gist that it's more Nordic than any kind of like, maybe some darker skin, I'm not sure, which is fine. I don't require diversity in my books. I don't have a checkoff list where you have to have it. I mean, I gravitate towards books that have queer characters. The problem is, the first time I read this, there was exactly one queer character that was exactly a one-off, and it was this effeminate gay shaman that was also predatory. And he's in one scene, and he makes one of the other protagonists uncomfortable, and that's it. Here's the issue with that. I don't expect things to be queer all the time. I mean, I'm a bisexual woman, so it's what I gravitate towards. But what was the point of that? Like, if you don't want to have queer characters in your story, fine, just don't have them. Why have a one-off and he's predatory? Like, that made no sense to me, and that whole scene was like, didn't further the plot in a plot-driven story, and I don't know if it was supposed to, like, reaffirm the character who was preyed on's manliness. I can't be sure, and again, I've gone over my head, like, it seems like a little thing, but in general, for me, if you don't want to include queer characters, fine. Just, if you're going to include only one queer character and it's going to be the villain, like, that's an iffy look. I'm not saying anything about what Michael C. Sahd believes or any of that. I'm not saying it's homophobic in any way. I'm just saying it seemed like an unnecessary plot point that might say something that he doesn't intend to be said. And like I said before, this has been heavily edited since I read it. Like, geez, are we at 2 months now? So that might have been edited differently or edited out entirely. I did not include it in my written review. I think I mentioned it in a wrap-up when I read this story for that month, but I can't remember. So that might totally be different now. And like I said, you gotta kind of take this with a grain of salt because he's changed it. So at some point in the future, I might actually sit down and read this one. And there's also another book that I gave 3 stars and the author made edits. And so I might do like a reread, re-review type of thing where I talk about the changes. But for right now, with all of the indie books I have, that's not feasible. In general, this is definitely a book for those who like lots of death and destruction and a really weird ultra fantasy magical ending. Not magical in a good sense. Well, maybe in a good sense, not in a Disney sense, at any rate. It like left turn. I had to reread a couple times just to make sure that like I fully understood what actually happened at the end. So it's definitely a book that you have to love plot-driven things more than anything else, more than character-driven, more than even scenic, which for me is not that big of a deal. Like, give me a general gist of the place we're in. If it's just, a wilderness, I don't need, Tolkien levels of descriptions of the trees. So I didn't mind that. I think part of my low rating before probably was, for whatever reason, I had assumed that it was character-driven when it's not. But I loved Orin's grief and his feelings in there. Samara, when she was a scared 8-year-old, was fantastic. And I'm still going to stick with 3 stars. Maybe in the future I'll reread it. So, again, take that 3 stars with a grain of salt. Maybe you want to read this and be like, here's how it's different. Margaret, here's what I noticed that was different than your review. I would love to hear that. Please feel free to tell me that I'm wrong with this review and that I should reread it because it has changed considerably for the better. I would love to know that's a thing. But regardless, I finally got this one done. Thank you, Michael, for sending me the physical one. I genuinely did not know that all my wild gesticulation was a positive thing. I was kind of fearing that people watch my videos despite that. So if you are an indie author and you'd be interested in a review, maybe with gesticulation, please email me. I will have my email down in the description below, as well as my review policy. Please give that a read through. It answers a lot of questions and saves us a lot of time. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.